In this video, we're going to study Chapter 2 of Book 1 of Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics, which is the required text for the Classical Liberal Arts Academy's Classical Ethics course. In our previous video, we studied the introduction to the work, where Aristotle introduced the observation that for all human arts and methods and actions and deliberate choices, there appear to be certain ends, and that if we were to try and define what the good is in the world or in human life, the good would be defined as that which all things desire. Those are simple, self-evident observations that Aristotle makes to get the investigation started, which we're going to pursue in classical ethics. After commenting on the observation that all human activities seem to be aimed at some certain ends, he goes on to discuss those ends, and he says that they can be divided into two different classes. Some of those ends appear to be actions or energies, and others appear to be works or products brought about by those actions. And then he goes on to discuss the fact that there appears to be a hierarchy of ends, and that leads us logically to a question, which is, what is the most excellent end, or the chief end? And that's the subject of Chapter 2, which we're going to read in this video. So let's begin with Chapter 2 of Book 1 of Aristotle's Ethics. If there is a certain end of action which we wish to obtain for its own sake, and we desire other things on account of this or for the sake of this, and our choice is not directed at all things for the sake of something else, if this be the case, it is evident that this end will be the good, and that which is most excellent. Will not, therefore, the knowledge of this most excellent or chief end be of great importance with respect to life? For by having, like archers, a mark at which we may aim, we shall obtain what is fit in a greater degree than if we were shooting with no mark to aim at. If this, however, be the case, that there is such an end, and that this end may be known, we must endeavor to adumbrate, that means to make a sketch of what it is, and show to what science or power that most excellent end belongs. But it would seem that it belongs to that power which is the most principal, and is especially architectonic. And the political power, or political science, appears to be a thing of this kind. For this science, the political science, ordains what sciences ought to be instituted or taught in cities, and which of them ought to be learnt by the several individuals, and to what extent. We likewise see that the most honorable of the powers or faculties are arranged under this power of political science, as for instance the military art, the economical art, and the rhetorical powers. All of these, which are among the most excellent of arts, they're all arranged as subservient to the political science, or the art of governing the city. Since, however, the remaining practical sciences use this political science, and since it also legally establishes what ought to be done, and from what it is requisite to abstain, the end of this science will comprehend in itself the ends of the other sciences, so that this will be human good itself. For though the good of an individual and a city is the same, yet to obtain and preserve the good of a city appears to be something greater and more perfect. For we must be satisfied indeed if we can effect the good of an individual alone. But it is more beautiful and divine to effect the good of a nation and cities. These are the things, therefore, which the method, being political, requires. This is chapter 2 of book 1 of Aristotle's Ethics. So in chapter 1, he establishes the observation that there are two kinds of ends sought by human actions and choices and arts and sciences. And then he explains that there also appears to be a certain hierarchy of those ends. And then in chapter 2, he goes ahead and establishes what appears to be, based on the criteria that he's established, what appears to be the most excellent of all ends, and that is the political science, or the government and administration of cities. He establishes that as the most excellent end, and he gives reasons for that. One of the reasons being that other arts which we consider to be most excellent, like the military art, or like the economical art, or the rhetorical arts, all of these, if we ask, are these things pursued for their own sakes, or are they pursued for something else, something better? We'll find that the answer to that question for each of those is that all of them are pursued for the sake of this, the political science. And so, based on these arguments, Aristotle concludes that the political science, or the work of politics, appears to be the most excellent end, and as such appears to be human good itself. And he gives another justification for that, saying that while it's good to effect the good, or to seek the welfare of an individual, how much better is it to seek the welfare of all of the inhabitants of a city? And so in this, Aristotle establishes the most excellent end. You'll see he doesn't waste any time or any words beating around the bush. He gets right to it. In chapter 1, establishes that there is a hierarchy of ends of all human actions. And in chapter 2, he establishes what that most excellent end is, being the political science. So, as you can expect, as we continue the study in Aristotle's Ethics, we'll get into the details of that and study that science itself, the science of moral philosophy and ethics, which is pursued for the sake of this political science. Because after all, we have to be able to say what is good for human beings so that it can be pursued and instituted and sought by the state. The state has to be able to explain what things ought to be abstained from. And in order to do that, there needs to be a science of moral philosophy at the foundation of political philosophy. And that's what we're going to establish here in Aristotle's Ethics. So for chapter 2 of book 1, go ahead and read that on your own. Study the chapter for mastery. And when you're ready, we'll continue with the next chapter. God bless your studies.